Welcome, everybody, to the Profit Toolbelt podcast. Got a really interesting guest here today, Andrew Pace. Now, Andrew's an expert in non-toxic building materials and building methods. This is a growing market. It's an increasing need that you see out there. And if you're trying to find ways to talk to customers and make yourself a little bit different than the competition, I think you're going to find a lot of interest in this podcast because Andrew's going to open up places in the conversation you probably didn't think to go, and hopefully give us some insights into areas of need that we can serve for our customers. And I want you to think, you might go, well, I'm not very interested in non-toxic building, and I'm not interested in mold, I'm not interested in harsh chemicals, but I want you to think for a second about your customer, not about yourself. That's how I came to even having this podcast. Think about the customer who is building a new home, and maybe they've got their mother-in-law moving in, and she's going through treatments. Think about the customer who's got a child with illnesses that they can't figure out, but they need to build a new home, or they've just moved, or they're renovating, or maybe they're just painting. Like, it doesn't matter what it is. Do you want to be the kind of contractor who has answers or who has access to answers? Or do you just want to say, we'll just do something simple. It should be okay. Well, that's this family's entire life concern right now. And if you can answer that concern, and if you can help them, then you're just being a bigger impact in your local community. And that's really, if we're going to do anything, we've got to do things with impact for both yourself and for the customer. So I think we're going to love what we hear from Andrew today. Stay tuned and let's get to the episode. Mr. Andrew Pace, how are you?
Dominic, I'm fantastic. It's great to be here with you today.
It's great to be here with you as well. I have a feeling you and I are going to have a great interview on behalf of everybody else.
Well, just based upon some of the discussions we've had in previous occasions, I'm looking forward to this. I think we have a lot in common, and I think your listeners are going to be really excited about the conversation.
Yeah. I never know who I'm going to meet. Jackson is the producer. He goes out and he finds cool guests. And I said, we need to find somebody in green construction. And so your name came up, but then you and I got on the phone and just blah, 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 blah.
Right.
We're gonna have to stay focused today.
Exactly. Let's keep this timeline going here.
Well, let me be serious. Today we're going to be talking to contractors and renovators about non-toxic answers, sensitivity to mold and harsh chemicals, which is your area of expertise.
It is.
But before we do that, I have a question I ask everybody at the beginning of every podcast episode.
All right.
Andrew Pace, who the heck are you? And how is it you come to be speaking to all these construction people, contractors, renovators all around the world?
This reminds me of the Steve Martin movie, The Jerk. You remember that from?
I do, but
who is Navin Johnson?
Okay.
Anyway, who is Andrew Pace? My background is 30 plus years ago, I got started in the commercial construction industry. My family has owned a commercial construction material supply company that dates back to the 1930s.
Wow.
So I get out of school, I start working in the family business, and it's my job to work with architects and engineers in commercial construction to help them specify in detail the correct materials for very specific situations. I was involved with wastewater treatment plants, with parking garages, with airport structures. I specialized in expansion control systems for concrete and coatings and different types of sealants to protect concrete from degradation due to salt and weather. And so I'd spent a lot of time with engineers. And matter of fact, at the age of 24, 25, I became the youngest president of a large architectural association called the Construction Specifications Institute. Now, I was really into it. I was writing specifications, drawing details, just really enjoying the business and the industry that I was in, until one day on a project that I was working on, materials that I was supplying for a below grade parking structure, we had a situation where people in the condominiums above started complaining of the aromas coming from the materials.
Mm.
And then, worst case scenario happens. 3 of our own workers are rushed to the hospital because of inhalation complications.
Oh,
They
it was really
literally
serious. It
couldn't
wasn't
breathe.
just a complaining, we
No,
don't like the smell of paint.
we don't like the smell of paint, or I saw somebody open up a can and I decided to complain. No, it was actually our workers could not breathe because
Oh
the
man.
curing process of the coating was sucking oxygen out of the room. And it just it scared the hell out of me. Excuse me, it scared the heck out of me, and made me think about: do I want to risk a 70-year history of my family's
Mm.
corporation? Do I want to poison my customers and my own workers?
Yeah.
This is not the way to go. And so I was still young and still eager to conquer the world, and I thought there's got to be a better way to do this. And I found a small company in California called American Formulating and Manufacturing, AFM. They make a whole host of products under the name of Safe Coat.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of fell into this new category of consumer called the chemically sensitive, environmentally aware consumer, and it just completely changed the way I looked at business.
Hang on. So the crazy story, by the way.
Mm.
And were the workers all okay at the end of it? Like,
Yes.
yeah, okay, good. So I don't want anybody to
All
get
was
hurt
well.
at work.
Yes.
Yeah, all is well. That's good. But what a lesson to learn, especially in a
Mhm.
confined space.
Right.
Yeah, gee. Um, there's so much to ask you, but I'm going to do this up front because I don't know where else to put it. But
Mhm.
you've got some other backgrounds as well that people might find interesting. Andrew, do you have any other hobbies that you might specialize in? So folks, listen very carefully to this next
Yeah.
part.
So I am somebody who cannot sit still. If there is a manual to read, I will read it. And I love things like, this is really strange. I love things like encyclopedias, and I love information. Several
Yeah.
years ago, matter of fact, when I was president of the organization, I remember the night that I was sworn in for my duties. Here I was, this young 27 something year old, and I had a number of people ask me afterwards, they wanted to buy me a drink.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, I need to sound older than I am because I'm only 24 years old or something like that. So I decided that I was going to order a scotch
Mm.
because I didn't want to order a beer. I didn't want to be one of those young kids having a beer. So
Yeah.
I'll take a Dewar's and water. That sounds great.
Yeah.
Fell in love with scotch to the point
To the
where
point.
to this day, I am now a certified Scotch whiskey sommelier.
I can only
Uh,
imagine the homework.
it was treacherous work. It was so I had to do a lot of research, which I love doing research for anything I sell or I'm
Mm.
involved with. I don't just kind of go in, skin deep. I am all the way in. And so I ended up going to Scotland, getting trained and, the education
Wow.
and the training, and then got home from that and decided that, well, here in the US, we have a lot of bourbon, a lot of bourbon drinkers. So I decided to do that. And I became what's called a certified bourbon executive. And
Is that
so
the same as a bourbon sommelier?
it's the kind of the US version of that. Yes.
Yeah.
And so I have friends and family and others now who hire me as a events coordinator. I'll do Scotch whiskey and other whiskey tasting events for private events.
Mm.
And so
That's
that's my hobby.
that is a great hobby.
It is.
Now listen, in the world of randomness, somebody
Yes.
who's been a guest on our show, a gentleman named Patrick Ellis,
Mm.
is that same level for sake, Japanese sake.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's
And
fabulous.
he was on our show because Wayne Gretzky actually kicked off his business. Totally different episode. We're way off track now, but follow
But
the
it's all
bouncing
business
ball.
related, right?
Isn't it though? Isn't it?
And
really?
so, and the funny thing is about this, and knowing that this is a business show, of course, I turn it into a business. I don't have a hobby that I don't end up turning into a business because that's
really?
just the way my mind works. So,
Sure.
form my corporation. Now I do these tasting events and so forth. It's an actual business. Years ago, I decided to take a bunch of whiskey barrels and turn them into tables for a private event I was doing at my house. So many people loved it that I started making these for other people. I just, my wife always tells me you need to have a hobby that doesn't that involve making money. And I'm like, what's the point?
Why do I do that? Yeah.
Right.
Well, geez, you got to be careful, because then you're going to be a guest on the other show, which is called Cabinet Maker Profit System.
Oh, fabulous.
Where people are making bespoke, custom furniture.
Sounds good.
Okay. Again, I'm going to not take the smile off my face, but I'm going to redirect us back to,
yes, sir,
Andrew Pace. There's this market for non-toxic answers for people who are sensitive to mold and harsh chemicals. Let me be the business guy for a second. Is
Sure.
there an active demand for this? Like, somebody listening who's got some smidgen of interest, would they be able to go and help enough people in the city of Cleveland, in the city of Ottawa? Is there enough people who actually care about that to make this a thing?
Well, I would say without a doubt, and the reason I say that is because the first city you mentioned, Cleveland, which I know a little bit better, a little closer to. I have customers in Cleveland who will say this is the complete opposite of green here in Cleveland. Yet there are so many people from that area that call me on a regular basis. The fact of the matter is that most contractors around North America that I deal with, if I deal with them for the first time, they will say, we don't really get a lot of people calling and asking for these things.
That's the first thought in my head. Are
right.
people calling and asking?
And here's why. Because the consumer knows they probably won't have anybody on staff that has a knowledge about this, or at least they assume that. The green consumer, the healthy home consumer, is a lot more savvy than I think the industry gives them credit for. They're already online doing their research. They're already contacting people like myself. They're already reading books. They're on blogs. They're on Facebook groups, so forth. They're learning all about this, and they kind of know what to look for when they go to a company's website to see if they might be somebody they can work with.
Are there certifications for this and I just picked Cleveland and Ottawa completely randomly, but are there certifications that are available to somebody in a city to say, look, if you're interested, we are certified or recognized, or we have a level 1 recognition?
Sure. So yes and no. There are certifications available for contractors from a standpoint of green or energy efficient. From a certification, from a standpoint of healthy, right now there really isn't, and that's something I'm looking to remedy. I maybe putting the cart before the horse, but I'll have some courses coming out in late spring about this.
Stop turning your hobbies into businesses.
Dang it, another one, right?
Hey, what are you doing?
Yep. And so I've had enough contractors ask me to put together some training on, please let us know what are customers asking for, what are the words to listen for. So this is what I'll be doing. But I think that if a contractor wants to put out there that we understand that people are looking for healthier homes, we are willing to have that conversation. And that's really the first thing I look for. If somebody asks me, if a consumer calls and says, there is nobody that I know of in Ottawa who builds a healthy home, what questions do I ask to even see if they'd be interested?
Yeah.
The first thing I say is, well, look for a quality custom home builder. And the reason I say that is because custom home builders are used to having clients with very specific demands. Every custom home builder in the world has those clients that comes to them with a house or a Pinterest page with 1,600 photographs of just the kitchen and says, build me this.
Right. But not that,
so,
but a little bit of this and kind of that.
Yeah. Exactly. And so the healthy home client also has that in mind, but they don't have any pictures to share. They just have ideas. They have thoughts.
Yeah.
And so a good healthy or a good custom home builder who says, I understand this. I know what you're talking about. We can achieve this together. And then the consumer or the builder or both reaches out to me and says, let's make this happen. Now,
Can I interrupt for a second?
yep.
So are we talking about products? Are we talking about product combinations? Are, like certain metals, as we know, can't touch each other or they corrode.
Mhm.
But what is it we're talking about here? Products, applications, application types. What are,
We're talking
again,
about,
I don't even know where to start.
right. We're talking about a holistic approach to building a home. Let's look at everything.
Hmm.
Now, am I saying that you're going to have to change everything you do? Without a doubt, no. I am saying probably 97% of the things you do today on a daily basis are perfectly acceptable for a healthy home.
As a builder, you
So,
mean?
so this is one of the things that builders get scared of. There's two things I get afraid of. Number one, if I now start to claim that I can build a healthy home, what does it tell all my other clients that I built homes for last year?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
They're unhealthy. And so you have to approach this in a very smart way. You have to say, we are open to the idea of making a home healthier for our clients based upon their tolerances.
Hmm.
And we're still trying to figure out the best way to market this. It's very new and how we're doing this approach. Unless you're a builder starting from scratch with no baggage, you can say, this is what we do.
Yeah.
The other thing is, every customer is different. We do know that if somebody has a mold sensitivity,
Mhm.
they also have a sensitivity to chemical off-gassing and probably to electromagnetic fields. But everybody's tolerance levels are different. Somebody can walk into a department store and walk right through the perfume aisle and not smell a thing or not be bothered by it. Their brain doesn't even pick it up. The next person walks through and gets halfway through and says, "Oh, I gotta get out of here."
Oh, so I went through Sephora at Christmas. I
Hmm.
couldn't, my eyes were watering.
Sure. I'm a type of person that can walk through a mall, an indoor mall, and as soon as I get within three or four, I don't know, three or four stores from a candle shop,
Yeah.
I will walk around because I can't tolerate the odor coming out of a candle shop.
Yeah.
And
I can
so,
tolerate it. I just notice it. And
well,
Sephora is a lot of noticing.
yes,
I'd
I
hate
can
to work
tolerate
there.
it if I have to, I will. But if I have the ability to avoid, I will.
Hmm.
And so maybe it's because of 30 years now working with non-toxic materials, my senses are a little bit higher than most. But think of the client who has what's called chronic inflammation response, or a mast cell disorder, or somebody who has been um, poisoned by a chemical exposure, like from pesticides or from cleaning materials at a place that they work. Their ability to tolerate those strong odors or chemicals is basically zero.
Hmm.
And if they come in contact, matter of fact, if they even come into a same room with somebody wearing perfume, whether they can smell it or not, they can probably sense it, and they have to leave.
And
And
so
so
these
this
are
is the
real needs
clientele
that
that we're
people
looking
have.
for.
Yeah, these are real needs that people have, and they're out there
Huge.
looking for solutions.
So many years ago, when I got involved in the business, and so let's kind of start at that point. 1993, 93 is when I first started selling toxin-free building materials, and the term green was still just a color. That it wasn't
Those,
actually a
you're,
way of life.
yeah, yeah.
The
Toxin-free building materials. I'm
Yeah,
just going to
I
write that
called
down.
them common sense toxin-free building materials.
Mm.
The United States Green Building Council wasn't even started until 1995. The LEED program never didn't come out until the late 90s, early 2000s. And so we were literally on the cutting edge.
Mm.
And our customer base, 95% of our customers were people who had extreme chemical sensitivities, people who couldn't tolerate off-gassing from anything around them. Today, I would say that constitutes maybe 3% of our audience. Most
Mm.
are people who just want to live in a healthier space. But I'll
Okay.
talk about that in a bit. So in the early to mid 90s,
Mm.
our customer base of people who had extreme sensitivities, they were calling up saying, "I can't tolerate the smell of paint. What do you have that's safe?"
Mm.
Well, today what we find is people have been exposed to mold, and they finally feel like they have enough information at hand that they can talk a little bit more intelligently about it because there's more information available online. There's more doctors and physicians who will treat mold exposure and mold sensitivities. The industry has at least accepted that there is a problem in buildings because of water damage leading to mold problems.
Right.
And they're starting to realize that the materials and systems that they use may actually contribute to these problems. So this is where, with the LEED program, leadership in energy and environmental design, has led to high performance buildings, really good energy efficiency with eliminating water intrusion and so forth. What the LEED program didn't really do is it didn't really address the human occupant of these buildings. It really looked at the performance. They want metrics for everything. They want to know how good the R values are and the U values and the blower door tests and all these other things that you can get metrics for. But somebody with extreme chemical sensitivity still can't walk into those buildings today and feel safe because they're not really addressing the 90,000 plus chemicals that are used in the production of building materials that we have absolutely no idea how they affect the human body.
Is there a good, better, best? Is there a stay away from this, use that? And, I don't want to be in a position here on the show where we're knocking a certain product or, manufacturer, but how, if I'm a builder and I've got, or a renovator or anything, right? But I've got a customer in front of me who's saying, look, I'm a little sensitive to smells or a little sensitive to this, or, my wife's recovering from this illness. We don't want anything to impact her. How do I go about finding the scope of, the selection of materials that I could use as a solution?
That's a good question because it's hard to answer because, again, like I said before, everybody's tolerances are a little bit different. And so when somebody hires me as a healthy home consultant, I act as a liaison between the customer and the build design team. I came from architecture and construction. I speak that language. I know how to read details. I know how to write specs. A lot of times the biggest hurdle for a consumer to get over on a project is the ability to communicate properly with the construction and design team. It's hard. It's hard for when a homeowner says, I'm sensitive to smells. I need to get rid of the smells. I need to get rid of the toxins. Contractors thinking, listen, I've been in this business for 30 years myself. I don't smell anything. There's no smells. I have no idea what this person's talking about. And so there's a lot of eye rolling. There's a lot of pushback because they don't understand the same terminology. Now, if a customer says to the contractor, I have some health issues, I'm going through some treatments for these health issues, and it has completely eliminated my immune system. So I need to be careful about the materials that are used in my home because a lot of these materials can have lingering, long-lasting negative health effects. Now, all of a sudden, the contractor or the architect says, you know what? My uncle is going through cancer treatments. I know exactly what you're talking about because he's got to quarantine himself after chemo because he has no immune system. They can start to relate to this now. And so I always tell my clients, get away from the words that scare the contractors, use words that they can relate to. Now, if I'm working with a contractor or with an architect, I'll say, now get away from the big words that scare the consumer, use words that they can relate to. You need to find a common ground in your communication, and that's where I step in. So I find out from the customer first, what is the exact type of sensitivity we're dealing with? If it's just, and it's not just, but if it's something as common as allergies or asthma, asthma is triggered by formaldehyde. Formaldehyde is a key trigger for an asthma attack.
Really?
among many other things as
Yeah, I'm sure
well.
there's lots of other.
But asthma has been known to be a key trigger. And so that's why you have situations where if you look at historically, people who live in government housing, low income housing, the kids generally have a higher asthma rate. There's a correlation between the building materials used and the asthma rate. And so, because a lot of times materials that are used happen to be less expensive, easier to get, sometimes donated materials. If it's like a habitat project, a lot of donated materials. Now, formaldehyde is not illegal to use.
Mm-hmm.
Formaldehyde is not illegal to manufacture, but the industry is starting to crack down on the amount of formaldehyde that you can have released from your products. So where this gets into a really gray area fast is the fact that, well, if you limit the amount of formaldehyde in the cabinetry and you limit the amount in the carpet and you limit it in the wall finishes and in this and in that and that, yes, it's low levels for all these different things, but added up, it's still a chemical soup inside of the home. You know, the average home built today has between 10 and 15,000 chemicals in the air just from the construction process. And because of high performance construction, because of the desire to build more energy efficiently, and energy efficient, we are building homes that don't have enough air exchanges to reduce the toxic effects of these materials. So we need to introduce fresh air. We need to introduce purified air. And most importantly, just eliminate the use of the toxic materials.
All of the HVAC and MEP guys just perk their ears up.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
You're talking upgrade.
Yep. Oh, yeah.
So just to make this a little even more common language, are we talking about things that we would call new car smell?
New car smell is a perfect example of it. That new car smell, the number one smell people have in their homes would be a engineered or manufactured wood smell. That's typically the smell of the OSB or plywood. It's a combination of both the wood sugars and the tannins from the wood and the adhesives
and the glue. Yeah.
Yeah. And
you
so
kind of know
happens,
that. I kind of know that in the back of my mind.
Oh, yeah.
I love the smell of cut wood. I love the smell of sawdust, but I don't think about what's in the smell. I think it's wood, but when it's OSB, you know it's not.
Oh, you know it's not all real. And keep in mind too, there's a lot of folks that have allergies and asthma and sensitivities to real cut wood. I mean, there's a lot of woods that are used in construction that still have unhealthy properties just naturally. And so we have to look at those things. We have to understand that just because something is natural does not automatically make it safe. You know, asbestos is natural, doesn't make it safe. So we have to look at these things from a standpoint of the actual application and how it's going to affect the occupants. I mentioned before, it's a holistic approach. And what I mean by that is we look at materials, we look at systems, we look at methods, we look at how much natural fresh air and natural light do we get into these homes. You know, light purifies. And so UV light purifies. We need to have more fresh air, more natural light, and the reduction of the use of toxic or unhealthy chemicals in the home.
It sounds like this is a whole, I want to say the word can of worms, and I know it's the wrong word. There's a whole world or Pandora's box behind this topic. You know, if I start to want to serve this market, it opens up a lot of questions.
It opens up a lot of questions, but I think that there is an endless amount of a growth in this. Look at just the last 15 years. So 15 years ago, we were at the zenith of the green building industry. The U.S. Green Building Council, the green building councils all over the world were seeing exponential growth rates. Manufacturers were coming out with eco-friendly and green. You couldn't get away from the marketing. You couldn't get away from the greenwashing. We were in this the situation where it was like the Wild West of construction. Everybody was saying they could do this, but there was no way to actually quantify it and to determine whether this is true. But then a real interesting situation happened. We had this especially here in the US, but we had this housing crash 2009 between 2009 2012. The housing market completely collapsed.
Mm.
All the manufacturers of building materials here in the US and most around the world completely shut down because there was no money in new construction or remodeling. And homeowners who were buying green for the sake of buying green, who were just saying to their neighbors, you should see the recycled glass and concrete countertops I installed. They're really eco-friendly and cool.
Right.
Well, there was no more money to put into remodeling or new construction. And so they paused. In 2014, 2015, they started coming back into the market, but with an education. If I'm going to buy eco-friendly, what benefit is there to me and my family? Is it going to improve the value of the home, the resale value of the home?
Yeah.
Is it going to improve the health of the occupants of the home? And then a few short years later, we have another worldwide situation, the pandemic.
Mm.
Pandemic literally shuts down production of everything worldwide, shuts down the sale of building materials for a period of time, because after a few months of being stuck in your home, people were looking around going, well, I should probably fix that and fix that and put in some new flooring.
Mm.
And now the remodeling market explodes.
Yeah.
But these same customers said, but I'm living and working in this house now while it's being done. My kids are doing their homework right over here. Can we not use materials that affect their health while they're here?
Mm.
And so the silver lining in this dark cloud of the COVID pandemic has been the response from people saying, I want to make sure the materials are safer for my family, because my house has got to be the sanctuary. This has got to be the place, that safe haven where I come to, where nothing is hurting me. And so I have never, in the 30 plus years of being in this business, I have never been more excited about the growth of the business than I am right now. Wow. You would think after 30 years I'd be burned out, but no, I think this is where this trajectory takes off.
Yeah. Well, and so I love the fact that you're this passionate about it. It's fantastic. I'm going to have to ask you about resources, because people listening are now going to have questions about that. But let's come to that in a second. But there's talk about a recession now.
Yes.
Whether to what degree it happens or not. I'm not an expert in that, but there's talk out there, and people are losing their jobs. Things are actually happening. Does that change the need of the consumer? Do people stop building homes, and do they stop caring about green, or do they now go to remodeling and still care about green? And ultimately, my question is about cost. How much more does it cost to go true green, not greenwashing? How much does it cost to go green in a home versus a standard 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 2-story? I almost said vinyl siding, and then I caught myself. I'm just talking about a regular home, traditional home. Yeah.
Nicely built, nicely appointed home, but not over the top. So first question was regarding construction. Historically, there's always a cycle. It used to be about a 7-year cycle of construction goes up and construction goes down. I'm talking new construction. Then it goes back up again, and then it goes back down. It's like a sine wave. When new construction goes down, remodeling goes up.
That's right.
That's what's historically accurate. In that 2009 to 2012 period, when new construction went down, remodeling went down too. And that's because the value in your home went down. You did nothing. It was all the big lenders who, the JP Morgans of the world who manipulated our values. Yeah. If you had a $300,000 home, if you just did nothing to it between 2009 and 2012, the home value went down about 10 to 15%. So during that time, you wouldn't put in a $50,000 brand new kitchen because it'd only be worth about $20,000. So people did nothing. I think we're now back to that more historic pattern pattern where new construction is down right now because of the cost of building materials, and specifically the cost of lumber, although that has come down in recent months, but everything else went up. So I think remodeling is going to be strong for the next few years. The same customers who are looking to build a healthy home are also looking to live in a healthy home. That's the key. They want to live in a healthy home. And so if they have to, at least for the time being, modify their existing home to make it healthier while they wait to build that dream healthy home, this is what they're going to do. So they're going to modify their HVAC. They're going to put in purification systems. They're going to clean their ducts. They're going to rip out all the carpet in their house and put in healthy flooring materials that don't off gas. They're going to, if they have to repaint because they're sick of the colors, they're going to use paints that aren't toxic. They're going to do the things that they need to do because they want to at least feel confident that they're not causing harm to their kids and to
or themselves if they've had a surgery or they're dealing with an illness. You're right.
Exactly.
I can see somebody coming home and probably the first thing they're going to say, oh, I can't assume this because it depends on the illness or the sensitivity, but they're going to want to change their air systems, the heating, ventilation, air conditioning, maybe even their water purification or softening.
Well, I think this is where they should look. Again, it's an expensive investment, to redo your HVAC. It could be anywhere from an $8,000 to $20,000 investment, depending on where you live and how big your home is. On the other hand, it's something that immediately adds value to the home, and you'll see immediate results, not only in the pocketbook because of energy savings, but you'll feel better, you'll sleep better when you have purified air in the home. So I think that if you're anywhere in this industry, contractor, subcontractor, what have you, you can all look at your own individual part of this and say, what should we do to sort of gear up for this influx of healthy home remodelings that will happen? And again, we're not trying to save the earth. And there's enough people in the world who are talking about global warming, global cooling, climate change, all that stuff. That's not what I'm talking about. And I'm not poo-pooing that. I'm not saying that we shouldn't care, but at the end of the day, when you're talking about you and your family, what's most important? If you interviewed and polled 1,000 homeowners and said, would you spend, if you're doing remodeling in your home or you need to do some fix-ups, would you spend a little extra to make sure that the climate change is improved? You'll get a percentage that'll say yes, probably 35%. Would you spend a little extra to make sure that your kids live in a healthier home? Probably 75 to 80% will say yes.
Right.
So you have to look at it and say, where am I going to focus my time and energy on? And so whatever part of the industry you're in, if you're listening, you've got to look at your own part and say, how do I find materials and methods that make my part healthier to the occupant of the home? And let's focus on that, and let's do some investigation into ways that we can offer that value added to our customer. Now, your second question, how much more expensive is it to build a healthy home?
Yeah.
So this really comes down to comparing apples to apples, quality level to quality level. I will say that most of the healthy home materials that I will bring into a project, recommend, are going to be on the side of being very, very high end from a sustainability, durability, longevity region or direction. So that will make them more expensive. The fact that they're also non-toxic and healthy, that's kind of like a side note. And so if you were to try to compare my flooring material to something else that's available at a local big box store, you would have to compare their high-end material to my
high-end
quality.
Yeah.
And their product is still unhealthy and mine's healthy. And so you compare apples to apples. If you were to look at adding in better HVAC, better lighting, better insulation, you're probably looking at about a 10% increase. I think using 10% is probably a safe bet, but it really will come down to looking at, again, the consumers, the differences, their own tolerances, their own level of sensitivity. I have 25 or 30 homes under construction throughout North America right now that I'm consulting on. I can tell you that all of these homes are the homeowners themselves have different levels of tolerance when it comes to chemical exposure, mold exposure, so forth. I have homes going up in the $150 a square foot range to the $500 a square foot range, but they all want the same thing, a healthy home. It's just
healthy.
What are they, the things that I cannot control? Do they want the brass switch plate covers or the plastic? Do they want a wide plank, 8-foot long European white oak for $15 a square foot, or will they settle for something that's a third of that price, but it's truly a healthy product? It kind of comes down to their own personal preferences.
Yeah. And the thing that drives personal preferences and the ability to pay more, really, it comes down to the most basic things. It's family.
Correct.
Because if your mom's moving into your basement, or, the guest house or something, and she has, an illness she's dealing with, it's your mom. You're going to do what you can to take care of her. And at the same time, we've got budget concerns, but you still have to take care of mom.
Yep.
Let me go to resources for a second here. Actually, let's start to go to our wind down. If somebody wants to find you, because I want to come to that in a second as well. I think you're going to get a lot of people calling you. Where does a builder, a renovator, a contractor go for resources? How do they start learning, or how do they start figuring out A versus B?
Sure. Well, the first thing I'll tell them is I'm a big believer in utilizing who is around you. I think that even if I'm consulting on a project I'm working on a job right now in Australia. I cannot supply material for this job in Australia from here in Wisconsin. So I am helping them find resources around there. So talk to your current suppliers, talk to your current lumber yards and dealers, and ask them if they've looked into these things, and truly have the conversation. And don't give them I've got some nut who wants me to build a toxin-free house. What can I tell them that will persuade them to not do this? Truly ask them, have your manufacturers actually looked at the materials that they use, the chemicals they use to make these things? And, is there somebody at the factory that maybe you can put me in touch with that can answer some of these questions for me too? This is where we've gotten to with things like, insulation. All fiberglass insulation now is made formaldehyde free. Why? Because people asked for it. And they finally said, this is a problem. We need to get rid of this, because people were having severe reactions, and they got rid of it. We need to start asking the questions. If the contractors themselves truly care about the health of themselves, their own staff and workers, their families, I guarantee that every contractor that's listening right now has somebody in their family that's going through cancer treatments. Ask the question, why? My mother-in-law passed away several years ago because of mesothelioma, because asbestos cancer.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Why was this material available? Because it was very effective at what it did, and it was a natural product, so nobody could ever think that a natural product would hurt. And then there was enough evidence to show that it was very dangerous, and we finally got rid of it. Although it's still not illegal, which is odd. It's still mined up in Canada.
Yeah, well, and I still see the ads on TV. The lawyers
from the lawyers
about mesothelioma doing
right.
Yeah.
Well, I do think that formaldehyde and other toxins from building materials and mold will become the next lead and asbestos in our industry, because we do know better. We know that formaldehyde is a cancer-causing material. We know that certain types of plastics are endocrine disruptors and can cause birth defects. We know all of this stuff, but the industry just wants to put the head in the sun mentality and say, well, I can't see anything, so I guess it's not affecting me. It's not affecting you either. So I believe we need to sort of take stock in our own lives and say, yeah, I do have several people in my life that are going through cancer treatments. Maybe we should look into this and ask a few questions. So I would say, let's start there.
And it's a good question to ask just at the kitchen table when you're talking to the family about the renovation or the build, or they're in your showroom. Right. I suppose it's a good question to ask, although you want to have the answers available, because opening up a door when you don't know what's behind it is scary as well.
It is scary. And obviously, I take nothing away from the fact that this is our livelihood. This is our business. Everybody who's listening today, we're not doing this just for kicks. We're doing this to support our families. And so it is a scary question to ask because you don't know what the answer is sometimes, mostly.
But you have to go research it and find it. And there's places to do that.
Start from asking your local suppliers, the people that you currently trust, and then look at on things. There's a lot of information online. I would say be careful with that. 50% or more of what you read online is probably not true.
No.
Yeah, I hate to break it to people.
What say you?
Yes, I know. It's, breaking news. The internet is not always right. Instagram
is not the new encyclopedia.
Right. Oh, Instagram influencers are not actually experts. So
speaking of experts, though, there's somebody listening who's probably already dying to get in touch with you and find out more or ask you questions. If somebody wants to get in touch with you, how would they do that?
Best way to get in touch with me would be to go to my website, which is thegreendesignCenter.com. And that's center with ER, not RE.
Yeah, ER at the end. Yeah.
And then that's the best way to find me, because from that website, you will find my consulting, my podcast. I do a podcast called Non-Toxic Environments, 3 words. It used to be a weekly show. Right now, it's about a monthly show because I just haven't had enough time to record.
Well, you need a good guest. That's what you need.
Yes, I know. We should just have this conversation every week, you and I, and I'll just, record and publish, because this is great. And so I will be starting a new weekly live video show, like a YouTube show called Non-Toxic Environments. And so I'll be able to announce more information on that shortly. But there is a massive desire from the professional side of things to learn all about this. Where do I go to find more information? And right now there just isn't a great definitive resource for this. So I'd say ask your trusted partners in business.
Yeah.
Reach out to me. I'm starting to do presentations to contractors, like a Zoom call. They can schedule me for an hour or two where I'll talk to the entire staff. And I'll start,
I suppose,
to educate them on the words and phrases.
Yeah, we've got association members here as well, like they're presidents or they're the VP of learning for an association. I suppose they might reach out to you. And you're on LinkedIn as well.
I am on LinkedIn, Andrew Pace.
That's tough to spell. I don't think we need to spell that for people. No, Andrew Pace. The Q is silence. Just tell them.
Andrew Pace. It's the American spelling of Pace. It's Andrew Pace. And so, yes, I have spoken at the U.S. Green Building Council, Green Build. I've spoken at National Hardware Show. I've spoken at CSI shows, AIA shows, in events. I'm even speaking in June to a international group of the Material Handling Institute to talk about how we're going to make our entire supply chain greener and healthier. So, if it's anything to do with making a home or a place of business healthier for the user, I'm all aboard.
Perfect. Okay, now I'm gonna switch compartments in your mind, Andrew. We're gonna close this door.
Yep.
And we're gonna open another door.
Yes.
Can you tell us the most underrated Scotch?
People,
and then this has to be a short answer, because I'm then going to ask for the most underrated bourbon.
Oh, okay.
right? So just give us a couple of suggestions here, because there's people listening who might want to follow in your footsteps and maybe test your theories.
So underrated and unknown are two different things. I'll give you an underrated scotch that's widely available, but people just sort of look by sometimes.
Okay.
And then I'll give you a lesser known scotch that is truly fantastic that most people don't know about. So for underrated, I think blends, any scotch blends, people who are scotch whiskey drinkers are like, I love single malts. I'll only drink single malts. Well, there are some really, really good blends out there. And a matter of fact, when I do my tastings, one of the tastings I have is called Blends Are Your Friends, because blends are generally less expensive, more readily available. The reason why blends are the most popular Scotch whiskeys worldwide, matter of fact, 97% by volume of all Scotch sold worldwide are blends. 97%.
Wow.
The reason is because of consistency. From one bottle to the next, from batch to batch, always tastes the same.
Okay.
So I think a very underrated blend is Johnny Walker Green. Now, if you know the Johnny Walker series, you know that there's red and black, and double black and gold and blue. Green is in the middle. Green is about $50 US a bottle. Green is made from all malt, so there's no grain in it whatsoever. It's all malted barley. So a blend of all malted barley, to anybody who is a 100% single malt drinker, they're going to like this. It's very complex. Very, I hate the word approachable, because that sounds like what
that sounds pretty pretentious.
That's what
I just used a big word.
That's a pinky up, if you're drinking wine. So I won't say approachable. It goes down nice. Let's say that. But it's actually very complex. And I think that people look past it because, it's a blend. It's a Johnny Walker blend. You can get those anywhere. Johnny Walker Green label.
Johnny Walker Green.
Hard to find, not harder to find, and very unknown is a brand. My favorite brand of Scotch whiskey of all time is called Mortlach, Mortlach.
Dead
Mortlach.
Lake?
What's that?
Does that mean Dead Lake? Mortlach?
Yes, it does.
Yeah,
it does actually. Mortlach comes from a small town in Speyside region of Scotland called Dufftown. Dufftown is known for the amount of distilleries. You heard the old saying that Rome is built on 7 hills. Well, Dufftown is built on 7 stills, and Mortlach is one of the originals. And Mortlach is very meaty. It's almost chewy. It's so tasty. It's got a lot of flavor that you just don't find, big, bold flavors that you don't find in many Scotch whiskeys. So that's been my favorite for years.
Wow, that's a selling set of words for me. Meaty and chewy.
Yes.
Scotch. Okay.
Yes.
Sold.
Yeah, very good.
All right, let's go.
And I can go into about a 30-minute dissertation of why, but let's save that for another episode. Bourbon. So my 2 favorite bourbons are one is Wild Turkey Rare Breed. I think people look past it because it's a Wild Turkey. Wild Turkey has this sort of a feeling with people that it's going to be really harsh and it's going to give you that real heavy, what's called a Kentucky hug, that burn that it goes down. But Rare Breed is a silky smooth, sweet, lip smacking good.
Okay. Bourbon. I was laughing because when you said Wild Turkey and then Rare Breed, I just know Wild Turkey as Wild Turkey, as if there's only one type of product they make. So that shows you how my pinky is down.
Right. Yeah. So Wild Turkey Rare Breed. Now that's going to be at the $50 US range. Something at the lower end of the spectrum, which doesn't get enough accolades. Now, every once in a while, I'll have friends over and we'll do blind tastings, and I'll have 5 glasses that are completely black, so you can't see color. Because a lot of times people look at color and say they'll give it a score based upon the color. Well, I'll have 5 glasses of bourbon next to each other, and all of them will be higher end except for this one. It's called Jim. It's a Jim Beam Devil's Cut.
Oh, I've heard of it. Yeah.
Jim Beam Devil's Cut is half the price of Rare Breed. But in a blind tasting, when I put these side by side, almost, I would say 80% of the time, people pick the Devil's Cut as their favorite. And for $20 a bottle, US, it is worth it. It's so good, so tasty. It's that quintessential bourbon flavor that people are looking for, that sweet corn flavor with a little bit of cinnamon, a little bit of almond, and a little bit of vanilla.
Okay, so just so everybody knows, you just took me to an ice fishing shack. That's all. That's all I could see in my mind. Like, I could drink that ice fishing.
Perfect.
Well, the cinnamon, right? The cinnamon and the warmth of that, and well, maybe I've said too much. Okay. Jim Beam Devil's Cut, really?
Yes.
Okay. Yep. And then hard to find bourbon. I mean, there's so many great bourbons.
Hard to find bourbons that are great. I look, so I'm a big fan of Jefferson's. It's out of Louisville, Kentucky area. Jefferson's is a wonderful bourbon, but they actually incorporate in some really old distillate as well. They have what's called their Presidential Series. They have anywhere from 16 to 25 years old. I think they even did a 30-year-old one year. And some of that uses some of the old Stitzel Weller juice. And so if you can find these bottles, they're not going to cost any less than about $300-400 a piece, maybe even more, but it is phenomenal stuff. I can't recommend it enough.
Okay. So can I tell you what's going on in my head for yourself and the audience? I think we're going to pull the last bit of this podcast out, and we're going to make it a special episode on its own. I'll do the whole episode on its own, but this little piece of training you gave us, thank you. That is fantastic. That's so cool. Thank you. I really appreciate it. And now I want to go ice fishing. Look, I'm already talking like I've been drinking ice fishing.
You can taste it already, right?
I can taste it already. Andrew, thank you. I really appreciate it. I love how passionate you are about this, especially for something that a lot of people would go, this feels like I'm sticking my head into a tornado. I don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
But it's going to be awkward, and I got to figure it out. And so I'm glad you're a resource out there for people, and that you pointed us to a few other ones as well.
Well, I appreciate that. And I will say this, that, being an elder statesman in this industry now, after being in this for 30 years, we actually started the first healthy home supply store in North America, and back in the early 90s. And so, I've been at this for a long time. Age also brings wisdom, and also brings a new perspective. And that perspective I have now is, years ago, it used to bother me. Why won't contractors change? Don't they realize this stuff is hurting them and it's hurting their clients? Why won't they change? Well, over all these years, I understand why. I know why, because they're craftsmen and women. They know what they're doing. They have, they know how much material can get done in a day, and what their profit margins are, and any wrench thrown into that is gonna hurt them financially. And so I totally get it. I totally understand. And the last thing I want to do on a project is tell them how to do their job. What I want them to do, I don't want to have to tell them. I want them to ask, because once they ask me, hey, Andy, is there a better product to use in this situation, a healthier product? Completely changes the dynamic of the project. They're now asking me for assistance instead of me barking at them how to do their job.
Right.
And so now I just wait. And this is why 99% of my clients are actually homeowners who hire me directly to work with their contractor.
Oh.
Very rarely does a contractor hire me. It's starting to happen more often now, and I certainly encourage it. But usually it's the homeowner. Once a contractor hires me, that tells me that, wow, they really do want to learn, and they're taking that next step. And so I'm waiting for that to happen. I used to market myself to contractors all the time. And it's like hitting my head against the wall because they're experts. I'm not going to tell an expert what to do.
Right.
And so I've realized this now. Again, age and wisdom. And so now I'm just waiting for them to reach out to me and say, hey, can you give me a hand?
I love it. Well, I'm sure they will after this. Thank you for sharing clearly just a smidgen, a little bit. A scotch. How's that? A scotch? Just a bit?
A scotch, yeah. A dollop. A dab. Yes.
Yeah. All right, Andrew. Thank you so much for being with us. We'll probably have you back again.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Well. Andrew Pace, thank you. Thank you twice, because we had a little mini podcast in there about bourbon and scotch. I did not expect that at all. I mean, I knew you were a scotch sommelier. I did not know that you were a bourbon executive. I didn't even know that was a thing. But what a cool conversation. Let's leave that just to imagine that didn't happen. What I'm going to do is I'm going to post that to the contractor strategy group. So if you're a member of the contractor strategy group, you'll be able to see that that clip there. But you hear it here as well. Where do I'm going to start in the most important place, which is taking care of our customer. And then I'm going to go to the second most important place, which is making sure you're running a good, solid business. A good, solid business is being able to solve problems that your customers have. When you understand that a business owner's job is to solve other people's problems and we get paid to do that, then you're in a good place. You're starting to move to that place where you're not just a contractor with a crew, you're a business person who just happens to be a contractor. You're a business person that just happens to be a renovator. You're a business person who just happens to run a tile company or a roofing company. That's the mindset shift that this whole show is based on. I want you to move from being a contractor with a crew to a business person who just happens to be XYZ, right? And so let's think about the answers that we need to be able to provide to our perfect customer. Let's think about the questions we can open up. If you want to be a specialist in mold and mold remediation, if you want to have a mold-free home, is that a search term worth caring about when you go buy your Google AdWords or run your Facebook ads or do your direct mail campaign or your door hangers or your postcards? Is that something worth pursuing? And you're going to have to do a little research on your own. You're going to have to go and find out in your market if this is a thing. And if this is a thing that people care about, maybe you become the only provider in town that does that, which means you're going to get the calls that other people aren't. And you're already setting yourself apart from everybody else. One of the keys to having a higher profit margin is to be different than the next guy. And I know I took the whole green industry and I turned it into money. You can all make fun of me in the background. I don't care. The reason I'm here, my customer is you. And the only thing I care about is your well-being. And so let's just take it back to where I am, bare-chested saying, look, this is the thing that we care about in this show, is how you can run this business a little bit better. So if you have a differentiator, something that makes you different than everybody else in the market, you can get a greater profit margin. Ultimately, what does that mean? That means that you can work less and make more because you're making more per job. So if you do 40 projects this year, next year you can do 36 projects, which means a little extra time to go on vacation or come home early and eat dinner with your family while it's hot. Who doesn't want that? Anyways, all that from this episode with Andrew. Andrew, thank you so much for a massively wide-ranging episode. I appreciate it so much. Folks, stay tuned. The next piece of the episode is questions and answers with Dom. Now, you know how you can leave me a question. If you want me to answer your question live here on the show, just go to speakpipe.com/ask Dom. It's a really simple website. It's got one big red button on it. Push the button and then speak into your computer. It'll record your question, and then I'll take that download and I'll answer it here live on the podcast. So you can get your specific question answered. Now, if you've got other questions that you want to ask other contractors as well, go to Contractor Strategy Group. It's a free Facebook group. It's only for the owners of construction businesses. There's no marketing on there. There's nobody selling Bitcoin opportunities, none of that stuff. We wipe those guys out. We don't even let them in. But there's more questions that could be answered there. So look forward to having you here if you're ready for it. All right, let's get to questions and answers with Dom and see how that goes. Hi, welcome to Questions and Answers with Dom. Today's question comes to us from William. He's up in Virginia, and he asked a question on the Contractor Strategy Group, which is a Facebook group just for us contractors that supports the two podcasts here. His question is this: how granular should we be getting on job costing? And how do you record waste as part of the costing? So it's quite an interesting question. It's stirred up a little bit of conversation here on the Facebook group, Contractor Strategy Group. I'm going to answer at least my perspective on this here in a sec. Thanks, William. Hey, everybody. Welcome to Questions and Answers with Dom. Today, I want to say thank you to William. William asked a question in the free Facebook group we have. Now, free doesn't mean it's cheap. You still have to apply to get in, and it's just for contractors. And all we talk about is geeky subjects like this, and I love it. So William asked a question, got a bunch of great answers. And as the time is, as of now, while I'm recording this, answers are still coming in. So if you're not a member of Contractor Strategy Group on Facebook, you should join. It's definitely not a waste of your time kind of place. There's no selling on there. There's no promotional days. There's nothing. It's just straight contractor talk to contractors, but the business of the contracting business. Anyways, William asks this question: how granular should we get on pricing? And then he goes on to explain a little bit further. He's getting granular. Like, it's hard to figure out exactly how much adhesive I use on a per job basis. I don't know how much sandpaper I used on that job. And what we're hearing here is something that I agree with, which is at some point, enough is enough. At some point, you got to stop. Now, for those of you listening to this going, oh, well, I don't do anything, so should I just stop there? No. Nice try, though. I like your style. I'm trying to find the cracks. What you don't know in the background is that William's already doing something called his end of job report. The end of job report is something that he learned by being in this community, right? It's an autopsy. What did I expect to spend? What was my estimate for doing this job, and what was my actual for doing this job? And then once you figure that out, you've got your variance. Were we high? Were we low? And so he's already got a culture of tracking things. So he's already in superhero status there. Let's agree on that, right? Once you're doing your end of job reports consistently, you start to get a really good sense of how the business is operating as a business person. Different than a tradesperson, right? But you're operating it as a business person. Now, once you know your numbers, you can move on, because you're just not going to figure out how much adhesive you used on a job. The best you can do is figure out how much adhesive you used for the year and divide that by the number of days you were open in a year. And now you have a cost per day, an adhesive cost per day, right? It's going to go up on some jobs and down on others. But really, all you need to know is last year we spent 60 grand on adhesive. And so that's a lot of adhesive. Let's say 60 grand. You're a big company now. Let's say you spent $60,000 on adhesive. Well, you know that next year, if your sales stay the same, you can budget another 60,000 for adhesive. So you now need to go back and divide 60,000 by 250 days, and that goes into your costs, right? Your material costs, because you're going to spend that anyways. And you've heard me say this on other pieces of the show. We're used to seeing this already when you go get your truck or your car fixed at the mechanic, and there's that little line at the bottom that says, shop incidentals or shop materials, which is for rags, cleaning solvents, and things like that. They already added in there. How often do you complain about that? Right? It's already in there. So at some point, you got to move on. And what might be happening, and I'm not saying this to you, William, now we've gone to the larger audience here, is I want to caution you guys being in something called analysis paralysis, where you start to look at the numbers so much that you just freeze up, just like, I'm thinking too much and I can't make a decision. That's the time when you need to stop and step back. It's actually a good time to reach out to us here and just have a conversation, because that conversation would obviously be private, would be very specific to you and your needs. You'd be able to download everything that's going on in your mind, get it all in front of you and understand it. But whatever you do, find a way to just step back. That's the time to stop doing the granularity and get to work, right? If you need more business, go marketing, go get more business. If your shop isn't running as efficiently as it should, go fix your shop. If your crew's not running properly, or if you need to hire some people or you need to train some people, that's what you go do, but stop getting too granular. At some point, enough is enough. I don't know what that point is for you, but I do know that when myself and our team is working with a client, you can tell when that time is coming up, and we can tell through the reports, we can tell from the feedback, because we're always, we're side by side with the clients. So we're right there with them, showing them the system, the tips, the tricks, the hacks, etc., the shortcuts. So anyways, if you're interested in being a coaching client, I'd love to at least have the conversation to see if the fit is right. Go to 10xblt.com. That stands for 10xbuilt.com. The website is 10xblt.com. Just go there, have a look around, and if you want, click a button to apply, and then we'll have a conversation. But it really is about taking the first step, deciding that at least you're curious about a question like William's posed here, and at least you're thinking about moving this business forward, being a business owner who just happens to be a contractor versus a contractor who runs a couple of crews. If you're in that transition, that is the definition of getting to the next level. So congratulate yourself, be kind to yourself. Listening to this show is the definition of getting to the next level. You're looking for new information to get yourself where you are today to the next place you want to be. So thank you very much for that. Hey, listen, another reminder, thanks to William for posing that question in Contractor Strategy Group. If you have a question that you want me to answer live here on the podcast, go to speakpipe.com/ask Dom and leave your question. It's very easy. Just push the button and start talking. And if you want to talk about ways to improve your business and you want to do that confidentially and privately and see what the opportunities are, then go to 10xblt.com, 10xbuilt.com, 10xblt.com, and let's have a conversation. Thanks for checking in, folks. I hope you enjoyed this episode. I appreciate you being here. Have a great day.